Okay, hello, this is Dr. James, and today we're going to talk about how to buzz out harness cables or other things where you want to trace a wire and you don't know where it's going. Maybe you don't have some fancy equipment. Here I have some so the idea is that we'll set these two scopes up. One is a signal generator and the other one has a receiver, and we will hook here. I like to set this one. Let's take a closer look at this guy. So there's like a little controller, or I don't know what you call it, thing you can press in on the top and it changes the selections, and you can change different waveforms. I like square wave the best. You press left or right to get the different selections, and we'll set it at 10 kilohertz. You may have to set it higher, but 10 kilohertz is possibly fast enough. Then we set up this scope up here. This is on VDD, and we press down arrow so we can change the scale to maximum sensitivity, and you can see the output of our signal generator down here is hooked up to this probe. I have it set on 1x so it doesn't attenuate it, and I just have it hooked up to a clip lead. And so as I bring this thing closer or further away from the clip lead, it picks up a signal wirelessly, basically, and so you can, in theory, trace wires back to their source. And of course, if you touch it, the signal goes off scale, but I think it's probably picking up some signal because it's close proximity to that guy. So we get it close to that cable, it picks up a lot of signal, and then it gets further away. So hopefully we can use this to kind of trace wires in the car, in a harness or something like that, where we don't know where the wires are going. They go into this branch or that. We can use a signal generator down here, one of these seed things, and a receiver, another seed thing, and trace the signals. And these are pretty nice scopes. They're moderately fast and they're pretty cheap. So if you have two of them, you can probably even do it with just one, because you can receive the signal, but you can't go very far away from it then if you're receiving and transmitting with the same one. So I guess let's try it out on the vehicle and see what happens. Get a good view of this. Okay, so let's try to hook this up to the car. We'll hook up the SIG-Gen first. Yeah, this one's set, actually. And here's our... Okay, let's get this down here. Okay, so we have our scope and our wire harness. Okay, and here is the plug. Well, what we did is we wanted to try to replace this frickin' catalytic converter sensor down here, and I replaced it with a new one, and it still didn't fix the problem. So I just want to trace out the cable to make sure it's going to where it's supposed to. And it seems like there's not a lot of information on the internet. I know the corporations want to sell you products and then keep all the information secret, so you have to keep on paying them to upkeep the product that they made for you and sold to you. And so let's try to trace out this. I'd like to find out where the ECU is. So we put a little clip lead here on the end of our scope or our signal generator, and I'm going to try to hook it into one of the plugs down here on the plug coming out of our catalytic converter sensor, which is right there. Okay, I'm going to have to put the camera down to put this plug on. And then we'll get a signal going into that, and we'll try to trace it through the cable, through the harness. Okay, so we have our, I hooked it onto one of the pins down there. Let's see if we can see that. Okay. So we have it hooked on. Now you want to be careful when you're doing this type of stuff, and hopefully I don't damage the ECU, because those are computers and they don't like high voltage. But I'm not completing the circuit, I'm just kind of putting an RF signal on one of the pins, and hopefully we can trace it with the other device that we have here, this guy. Get him up and running. Okay. And I'm going to try to trace the signal with this guy. Okay, here we have our detector scope set up here. And right below the scope we have a cable, unsure where the plug is connected to. And so if I take this wire and I stick it next to there, I don't know if you can see, the signal goes up. See that? The signal goes up when I put the wire near there, and if I pull it away, the signal goes down. So I'm pretty confident that if you put it near there again, the signal goes up. So that wire is going to that part of the harness, and so we can go through the harness and try to figure out where the ECU is, because like I said, they don't give you a lot of information on the internet. I would like to just make sure all those wires in that harness are working properly. Tried some other fixes and they didn't work either, so I'd like to figure out what's wrong with this thing. And so this is a high-tech way using RF to probe your harness, your wire harness in your car. Okay, so we'll hopefully go through this and try to figure out where the ECU is and try to determine if our we can the wire harness is working properly or not. Okay, I'm trying to get a good view of this thing without the. Okay, there we go. Try to get this down next to the wire harness, and we bring it near there. Get a much bigger signal. We take it away. The signal goes away. Okay, so we'll try to trace out that wire harness and see if we can see where all these frickin' wires go. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, we can bring the probe close to the harness, and we can see the signal on there, so we can buzz out our harness cables and see where the wires go, see if there's a connection inside of them, because it won't carry the signal down. When you input the signal, it's kind of like a wave, and that wave will travel down even if you don't have a complete circuit. It's like a radio wave almost. Okay, so it looks like that so anyway, I trace the cable on this one. I think it was hooked up to the positive pin, and it's a 12-volt pin, and it looks like it comes to the positive of the battery. And you can definitely see the signal. The signal starts to get a little bit smaller as you go further away, but it definitely seems to work, so I'll have to probably hook it up to a different pin and trace that out, because I knew where the battery was, I just didn't know where the ECU is. Okay, one more tip. It looks like sometimes if you can't get a good signal, if you touch the ground of the scope to the ground of the chassis, then it'll actually, I'm touching it over there, and you can use the other wire like an antenna. You can increase your signal. See, here, let's see if we can get it without the glare. Not touching and touching, so we get that square wave signal that we're putting in, and so that might be another possibility, to try to touch the ground if you're not getting a good signal. It's at least one of the only one of the wires, the ground wire of the scope, and use the other one like an antenna. See, I got it spread up like an antenna there. So just another hint that might help out if you want to try troubleshooting this way. Okay, so now that we found the ECU finally, where it really is, I've hooked up my seed as a signal generator out here, my more expensive one, at 10 kilohertz, and I'm feeding the signal down into, you guessed it, the catalytic converter plug, the signal generator, or the signal input. And we've traced the cables back, and I found out where the ECU is. It's actually under the passenger side down here. And what I was hoping to do is be able to take, the probe and kind of probe near the cables and see where there's activity. And it seems like it's not really quite sensitive enough toward the end of the cable, because I believe it's RF effects. The signal's terminated here, so it goes from a high current to a high voltage signal. And so the impedance is changing. But if we take, here's the plug, and here is our wire right here, and you can get to it from the back or the front. It's easier for me to plug it in the back. And see, I can test it wirelessly, which is a neat thing. I don't have to run a wire. I just have to put the input probe of the scope and test the different pins, and when I got the right pin, it'll light up. Right? If I plug it into the other pins, it doesn't light up, but if I get the right one, I can see that there's a circuit there without having to run a long wire. So that's one nice thing about this type of RF testing. And so one bonus thing I can say, even if it maybe is not as effective at troubleshooting short cables because of the end effects of the transmission line, we can definitely not have to run a long wire around from the front to the back of the car to troubleshoot it. Okay, maybe we'll test it with the other guy also, as well, as long as we got things unhooked.